This week's edition of Landlording for Life is brought to us by our good friends at Audible.com. Go to audibletrial.com/landlording and preview over 180,000 titles. At the same time, get a free audiobook download and free 30-day trial to all of our listeners. Now on to this week's podcast.
This is the Landlording for Life podcast, where landlords explore their success and stories of failure while building a foundation to improve upon. Here's your host, Sean Morrissey.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Landlording for Life. As always, thanks for joining us this week. I'm your host, Sean Morrissey, and today what we're going to talk about is really some foundational stuff when it comes to understanding personal finance and perhaps digging deep and defining what our true character is. So that the topic for today is inspired by a blog post that Jereds Sturm, we have on the podcast today. He wrote a few years ago, and it's called Why Making More Money Won't Make You Rich. So I decided to have Jered on because, man, this blog post is great. And I love taking ideas from blog posts and putting them into podcasts just so we can elaborate on that specific topic for our listener base. Now, Jered is the co-founder of SNS Capital Group. He's basically a general partner on over 450 units. So he's got plenty of real estate experience. And then with that in mind, he really focuses on helping folks achieve financial freedom over time. So having said all that, Jered, welcome to the podcast.
Sean, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and sharing with your audience as well.
Yeah. Thanks for all your time. We really appreciate it. So, Jered, just like we do with every guest, tell us a little bit about yourself, what got you started in real estate, and where you're at today.
Okay. Yeah, it's been, I'll try to slam 15 years together in like under 60 seconds.
Very good.
I started as a maintenance technician for a local landlord here in the Cincinnati, Ohio market, just doing his typical repairs and turnovers for his rental properties. And I learned a lot from him and took that and started a construction company with my brother doing kind of kitchens, bathrooms, additions. And then when we took those skill sets and started buying up single family houses, renovating them, renting them out. And single family houses turned into fourplexes, turned into 10 units, turned into 40, and then eventually 100 plus unit apartment communities.
Awesome.
And so I come from a very organic growth, grassroots background of being the guy swinging the hammer to actually building out the company and handling the property management as well as the asset management on a larger scale.
Love it, man. And that's to me the way to do it, because you get down and dirty with the maintenance stuff, you get down and dirty with the property management, your ability to scale and understand your systems and control your systems are that much stronger. So looking forward to having you on today. So as I stated at the beginning of the show, this topic was all inspired by a blog post that you wrote some time back. And a lot of it has to do with making sure that money doesn't drive us completely. Well, let me put it this way. In essence, you made a great analogy to money and personal finance in the form of a car, right? So I was hoping that you could take a step back from when you wrote that article some time back and describe to our listeners why money is the fuel that drives the car and not necessarily the engine that should be driving you, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think the reason I wrote it is because there's just this misconception of if I make more money, everything will be okay. Or if I just made this, that, or the other, everything would be different. And I think that's just a misconception that you have to focus on the mindset more of that the reality is when you add money to the equation, you just become more of whoever you already are. And so if you're an overspender, you continue to be an overspender. If you're a generous, kind person, you'll continue to be a generous, kind person. And it's just fuel to the fire or fuel to the engine, as the article analogy is. And so my point was focus on your values or your steering wheel or your lifestyle, all of those things kind of being analogies in the article, rather than just focusing on making more money. Because if you first get control of that steering wheel and have the lifestyle suitable and how you handle money, adding to it will only make your life better. If it's a mess, adding money to it will only make your life worse. And so that was the reason behind writing that article, and hopefully explains the analogy that you're looking for there.
Yeah, no, that describes it just fine. And in fact, I'd say in the last 2 years for me personally, when I talk to folks about goal setting, right, so much of it has to do with, taking a step back and defining the lifestyle you want, and then the money will basically fall in place behind that. And I feel like a lot of the goal setting that's set out there is, because it's so objective, right? Like, how much money do you want to make in 3 years? X amount of dollars. Okay, great. That's what you're going to achieve. And then your lifestyle is forced to comply to whatever you're doing to make that dollar amount. So at the end of the day, we tend to focus on the fuel and not the steering wheel. And as simple as it sounds, I think that's a very profound analogy because of the fact that, if you can't drive the car, what good is the fuel anyways? And I think that's what hits me. So having said all that, I kind of touched on it there briefly, but how would you describe the steering wheel? In your analogy, what does the steering wheel mean to you, and what does it mean to the folks that are in essence in this game of real estate?
I wouldn't say it's specific to real estate. It was more just a personal finance in general. So applicable to really anyone that uses money. So everybody. And the steering wheel is your values, your lifestyle, and kind of how you conduct yourself. And so you will become more of whatever all of those things are by adding more money to it. So that is the steering wheel.
Okay, very good. And then naturally, money is the fuel, and that's what powers your ability to control your personal finance on a day in, day out basis. So for yourself, for those that perhaps you've mentored in the past, once you're able to focus on the steering wheel portion, right, of controlling your personal finance, and money's not being used as the fuel, what doors do you think open up for people, or perhaps for you specifically? And, I can certainly elaborate on my own.
Really, whatever doors you want. The mindset of focusing on the steering wheel also makes you focus on like self-ownership. So like, if you're in control, you have your hands on that steering wheel of your life, of your lifestyle, of your values, then you take ownership of all of the results of what comes of it. And so you get to choose which doors open because you choose where you're going in life. So you direct yourself to those doors and you get to open them or pass them by. And so I think it's a mindset shift of responsibility and ownership. And if you align with that analogy, then you'll be able to kind of go wherever you want to. Not that there's a right or a wrong destination, but like you said, an intentional lifestyle, kind of building that out and designing it yourself to then put yourself wherever you choose to go.
Yeah, and I think that's well stated. And I think that ultimately you're able to stay focused towards what's important to you, right? So for instance, you may say that by the time you're 65, you want to donate $5 million to charity or something of that nature. And if you've got that as the leading cause, the leading figure behind your goals and what you're driving to, that steering wheel analogy makes more sense. But again, if you're focused on earning X amount of dollars over so many years, I feel like that's where you could very well drive off the road. Or I think, I don't know about you, Jered, but I can think of individuals that have become so money driven to where they've lost control of their family, or ultimately, cracks in the pavement ultimately led to crumbling walls or crumbling sidewalks, I suppose. So, So having said all that, there was a quote that you made in this blog post, and I believe one of your readers actually commented on the book that it came from, and we could talk about that if need be. But I'm going to read the quote, and I was just hoping, perhaps you can give our listeners an example or elaborate on it. But basically, you stated this: if you take the time to gain financial education, if you learn about the flow of energy from how capital works, you can not only control it, but you can harness it to do even more good in the world. Focusing on the steering wheel before the fuel is the way we do this. Yeah, to me, that was very impactful. And a lot of that all stems from financial education, right? Ultimately, having the foundation to understand where to put your dollar to create more dollars. Did you want to elaborate on that at all?
Yeah, well, I'll bragfully, I guess, braggadociously take credit for that. That was me. That was my quote.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That was me writing that, not the book. But
Beautiful.
no, I guess, yes, aligning with that quote, what I mean by that is money is just an exchange in value, right? So that's just how we quantify an exchange in energy, an exchange in time. Capital is just, that's how we quantify it. And so if you can get more money, then you have the ability to distribute that energy in however way you want. And our argument in this article and what we're talking about is to do good with it. And so it's not, money is not the root of all evil. It just depends how you use it. And so the having that energy and how to deploy it for good can come in, millions and millions of different ways. And I'm sure you and your listeners all know that. And you could go with a simple example of like, you make a lot of money and you donate. I think you said in your hypothetical, like, I want to donate $5 million to X charity by the time I'm 65. I mean, that's a great kind of clear cut example, but there's also like the more indirect examples, and something specific to me in the business that I run is, I buy C and B class apartment buildings, usually renovate them, clean up the management practices, make them worth more, strip the equity out through debt, and then redeploy that to do it again. And so it's a way for me to make money, absolutely. But in that, a little more indirect way of how I bring good to the world is, our mission statement in our management company is we deliver the feeling of home, not necessarily homes, but the feeling of home, like respect, stability, belonging, and those types of things. And our belief is the good that we bring to the world is very indirect. So comparing a situation where like, a mom comes home from work, she hits 3 potholes in the parking lot, spills her coffee doing it, walks in the door to her apartment. There's, smoke smell and loud music blaring. And she walks into her apartment and her kid's there, 3 years old, trying to give her a hug. And she's just frustrated and wants to get changed and take a shower because of all the bad things that happened as soon as she pulled into her parking lot. Well, the alternative and something we can do as a company is the opposite of those things. The parking lot is good. It's stable, common areas. Her unit functions just as she would hope for. And she opens up that door, she sees her 3-year-old, and she gives him or her a hug and asks how their day was. And those small, very impactful moments will ripple out into the world as good. And so there's the really clear cut, I'm going to donate $5 million to charity. And then there's the very indirect impacts that money have. And so, that's the energy that I guess I'm talking about that money can have. And if you have that, and I've always had that kind of belief of creating good and getting it out into the world, more money will only create more of that. Now, if I'm just greedy and selfish and all other values that, are negative context, I will just become more of that if I get more money. And so that's what I want people to focus on, is focus on the good before you go and, earn a bunch of money. Because you can be a kind of a crummy person and earn tons and tons of money. That's not unlikely, but it's more impactful if you first focus on who you are and then add the money to it.
Yeah, I love it, man. So it starts with character, right? Or, for those
Absolutely.
of us that are parents out there, to actually build children of good character. And then, yeah. Ultimately you had asked this question within your blog post itself, and that being that the most difficult question to answer is, how do we focus on the steering wheel itself? And your answer to that is financial education, financial literacy, right? Because it's not a subject that's commonly taught in schools. And frankly, as adults, you've got to go out there and seek the answers. They aren't handed to you. And through that, or for that reason, there's a lot of, I don't want to say scams, but there's a lot of through the lack of financial literacy, there's the opportunity for others to take advantage of you, right? So I'm wondering if we could talk about that financial literacy portion and perhaps, if for yourself or folks that you've worked with, ultimately some ways that you've been able to become financial literate over the years, or means that you've suggested others.
Yeah, I had a great upbringing, so I was very very lucky to have parents who talked about money, and they weren't entrepreneurs by any means, but opened my eyes to it. And then I always had intrigue for it. But just the average person, like you said, doesn't get taught it in school. And it's kind of taboo in society to talk about money, to ask those types of questions. And so how do we learn it now? I actually believe, again, being an optimist, like there's no better time than right now to have the opportunity to find ways to find each individual's path for financial freedom. Because I don't think there's one set way, but because of the internet and free resources, just like your podcast, people have the opportunity to expose themselves to what financial freedom might look like for them. I think the biggest misconception is they think it's like people, and usually the scammy con artist people make it sound like there is one way. Like if it's my way, this is how you can get it, and you'll have financial freedom, and you'll have a yacht and a boat or a plane or whatever. And I think what's so important is to realize financial freedom is just a destination that could be all different places depending on the person you are. Like, for example, you can make $30,000 a year and be financially free as long as your lifestyle that you want and enjoy only requires $30,000 a year. And that's not to say that's right or wrong. I mean, it's definitely could be right if that's right for that person. But if you truly want the yacht and the plane and all of those things, that's fine too. But you're going to have to exchange that energy and that time that we talk about for the money to live that lifestyle to achieve financial freedom. And so I don't have a specific answer to say like this is what you should do, other than there's tons of free resources out there to begin exploring each individual's own path, and then align yourself with whatever interests you and feels easy to you and kind of aligns with your own personal goals.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying there, at least what I pull from it, when it comes to defining what financial freedom is, right? Ultimately it's a personal decision, right? So who's to say that $30,000 isn't your financial freedom figure on an annual basis, or $2 million? It's up to you and the lifestyle you want to live. But at the end of the day, it is fair to say to some degree that there is a means to an end, that if you want that $2 million instead of the $30,000, you're going to have to put in the time to pay the crime, for lack of a better phrase. But at the end of the day, you've got to make that personal decision yourself, and you can't do it until you sit down and ask yourself who you want to be, where you want to be, and when you want to be there by, I suppose. And that to me is so much of what your blog post is all about. Podcasts, financial
quick,
books.
Go ahead. Trying to tie that back to the analogy. It's like the $30,000 a year. If that's your end destination, you only need so much fuel in the car to get to that destination, which is fine. But if you want, $2 million, your destination is much further away. You're going to have to put more fuel into that car. And like having a grasp on that steering wheel to ride that long path or that long road trip is going to be absolutely necessary. So it all just depends on where you want to go, like you said. Beautiful.
And that leads to my next question, which is ultimately finding balance between the steering wheel and the fuel, right? Or ultimately finding balance between the lifestyle you want to live and the money you want to make in life. And I know, again, this all comes down to personal decision, right? But I guess for you personally, how do you find that balance, or how did you find that balance in the course of building a real estate portfolio?
It's a work in progress. Like I would be a liar if I told you I have it perfect, and I don't think anybody ever does. I think in the beginning, I wrote another article and talked about like what separates successful investors. And I talk about in the beginning, like when I was doing it, really was I reflected back on like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And it's like in the beginning, I was doing it and earning rent from people to then be able to put food on my table. And so like that was absolutely essential for me to do it. And then as I got better at it, or it began to make more money, then it became more about fulfillment and like, creating that good for the world. And so the balance shifts is what I'm trying to get to, is like it becomes different as the progression goes on. And I do my absolute best. I mean, it's about determining the end goal, right? The lifestyle that you want. So if I said, I want $5 million, or if I want to be a billionaire, like I truly believe I could become a billionaire, but I also have no desire to become a billionaire because I understand the exchange of energy that it would take to do that. And the equation is finite. So I would have no time for family or my kids and all of the other important parts of it. And so if you realize that your time and energy is finite, then you figure out the end destination, and you can figure out where everything needs to kind of fall into place. And so that's like the definition of financial freedom, is defining that out and then achieving it. And so that's how you find that balance. And for me, it's a always moving target, learning process, because it was completely different before I had kids. And then I was like, wow, I'm going to adjust because my life has adjusted drastically.
Yes. And a great answer. And, being a father as well, I can relate, where when I think, pre-marriage or frankly pre-kids, you have all that time available to you, right? So ultimately you can focus not only on building yourself, but building your business. But once you add the family into the mix, it takes up, frankly speaking, it takes up a good chunk of what the time and energy you used on your business. So you've got to figure out a means to either, I guess I'll just say, leverage the tools that you have in place better to earn more money using the same amount of time, or you sacrifice your family for where you want to be, which, I don't necessarily think that's the right thing to do. So having said all that, based on what you said, there's one more thing I wanted to throw into it, and that's that we each get to choose different tools to leverage our time to create that sense of financial freedom. So for guys like you and me, that's buy and hold real estate, right? And I feel it's a phenomenal way to leverage your time to make a more passive income style. For others, it might be inventing the next, app that we're going to use on our phone or something of that nature. But you also have to take into consideration the tool that you're using with your time to create that income, and whether that tool is going to be worth it to you in the end to get you from point A to point Z and hit those goals that you want to achieve without money being the leading figure. So anyways, that's just my own 50 cents there. But yeah, unless you had anything else to add, I'll be happy to lead to the next question.
Yeah, let's jump to the next one.
All right, awesome, man. So yeah, the next question was what equation you like to use to compute a financial freedom figure, right? And perhaps before I ask you that, let me go over the way I like to compute it. And really all I'm doing is taking from others' ideas, right? But in essence, it's 3 times your monthly expenses, your regular monthly expenses that you want to earn in passive income. And again, passive is in quotes. I mean, it's very much an elusive figure to some degree, because nothing to me is 100% passive. But what you consider to be income that would come from you not working, and working being doing something they don't like. So 3 times that monthly expense figure, to earn on a monthly basis, with the idea that you're not working for anybody, that you're living comfortably, that you're living the life you want to live on a monthly basis. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I guess that's not really a hard and true form of an equation, but I think I gave enough substance there for folks to wrap their minds around. How do you like to use that same type of equation to elaborate on what a financial freedom figure might be?
Yeah, and this is a really good point, because we were both agree that financial freedom is different for everyone. And so thinking of that and thinking of financial freedom for myself over the years, what I've come to the conclusion of is I really enjoy what I do for work. And so it would be sad for me to stop doing it. And so I've never had the goal of retirement. I don't want to quit doing it anytime soon.
Yeah.
And so financial freedom for me has less to do about not working, and more about the family side. And so something I've always thought of is, what is financial freedom for me? It is if I went outside and got hit by a bus today and died, could my family maintain the lifestyle that we live right now, just minus me? But financially, could they maintain that lifestyle for the remainder of when I would have been here without me. And that's what financial freedom is for me. Not so much of like, when can I quit, or it has less to do with me, I think, than the normal definition. It's more about, if I was gone, could my family continue this lifestyle for the next, whatever I would have lived to in an average life.
Oh, I love it, man. So you took it to the next level. So in essence, you're stating that financial freedom to you is not only that, in my world, 3 times that monthly expense figure, but it's ultimately, if you were to kick off tomorrow, could that form of passive income continue to support your family? I don't want to say till eternity, but for quite some time, frankly. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's fair to say.
Awesome.
And I own a decent amount of cash flowing assets that continue to appreciate in value. And so, getting close if I'm not there. And so it's a different way to look at it for sure. But it's the same exact definition of like, if I didn't want to work and I just stopped working, could I maintain the same lifestyle? It's the same way of looking at it. But when I phrase it that way, for me, it's like, well, I don't want to stop working. So then I'm not motivated by it at all. It's not important to me. But when I phrase it as like, well, if I wasn't here, could my family still maintain this lifestyle that we've built and really enjoy? And that's really important to me. So then I'm like, oh, now I'm motivated by it. But yeah, the idea of like, because that is the more typical definition, because most people don't like what they do. So they say like, what do I have to make to where I could quit my job? Yeah. And it's like, well, that is demotivating for me. So I just kind of gravitated away from that. But it's not to say that was right or wrong for others to do it that way, but that's how I've defined it.
Yeah, no, well said. I love it, man. Making us think outside the box. Very good, Jered. Well, this has been a bit of a different episode. It's really, I kind of took a step back from the world of real estate and just took a broader brush to the world of personal finance today. And I appreciate you expanding on your own thoughts and the blog post itself. But yeah, I guess what's the best way for our listeners to reach out to you if they have further questions on this topic, or perhaps they want to look into some of the funds you're putting together on the general partner side?
Best way would be through our website. So it's SNS, that's 3 letters, like Sam, Nancy, Sam, capitalgroup.com. And there's just the typical like about us page there. And you can always click on me and just send me over an email.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, and I'll try to link here to the blog post itself. It was a Bigger Pockets article you put together some time back. But again, I appreciate your time today and elaborating on your thought process and in regards to what financial freedom is and what it is to you and your family. It was beautiful stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. And if you ever want to have me back to talk more of the nuts and bolts of real estate, I'd happy to do that as well.
Yeah, man, that'd be great. That'd be great. Thank you. So that'll conclude this week's edition of Landlording for Life. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. And hopefully this episode was useful to you. If so, please leave us a positive review on your favorite podcast hosting device. In the meantime, we'll be back next week with another episode. Until then, everybody, bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode. If you like what you heard, leave us a 5-star review and join our Facebook group to share your deals and ideas by searching at Landlording for Life. See you next time.